I spoke with Steve last night and Meadows. What Steve Mnuchin says is what he always says, which I agree with. They don't support it in its current form. I've long been saying we don't want to precipitate a 25% currency appreciation overnight. We know that this can't be. The intention of the blueprint was not to say we are going to require 25% of currency appreciation tomorrow. We know that there are import-sensitive industries, retailers that could be severely disrupted if this is done the wrong way. So what we're trying to do is go through Ways and Means, Finance, the White House. How do we blend these approaches? How do we phase things in? What do the alternatives look like? So I don't see this as anything like folding. I see this as how do you collaborate to get the best possible tax code that you can pass? We agree on 80% of tax reform right now already. Lower rates as far as possible on businesses. Go to a territorial system. Get as close to immediate expensing as you possibly can because we think that's good for manufacturing. Simplify the code from 7 brackets to 3 for individuals. Get rid of the death tax. Simplify it with raising the standard exemption so 96% of Americans don't have to itemize and they can do their taxes on a postcard. Everything I just said, everybody agrees to. Okay, so it's that final 20%, which is what is the base broadening needed to get there, and that's the debate and the conversation we're having. And I agree with Steve Mnuchin, which is full, immediate border adjustment would be too disruptive, and so no one's actually advocating for that.
So we look at the border adjustment tax, which would make exports more, make imports more important, including things that people in Janesville buy at Walmart. What are you willing to discuss that could move your position closer to that of the administration?
Well, I don't negotiate to the media, and you've heard me say that a million times, so I don't want to do that, but we're having...
But you get a policy in a way that most leaders don't. Like, what are...
Well, I chaired the committee before, so, but let me say it this way. People in Janesville go to Farm and Fleet to buy their stuff, and a lot of that stuff is imported. If we have a border adjustment, the currency adjusts so that the purchasing power for the person going to buy a Carhartt jacket at Farm and Fleet in Janesville doesn't pay more, doesn't have has the same purchasing power.
That's very hard to explain.
It is.
Meeting.
I just said it, and it's hard to absorb. I get that. But here's the other point. We are shooting ourselves in the foot as a country. We are telling American businesses it's so much smarter and better and more worthwhile. Make your product overseas. So source your supply chain overseas. Let me give you one thing, and I don't think he'll mind if I say this publicly. I met with the CEO of Intel a couple months ago. That's a big company, Intel, high-tech company. 30 to 40,000 people in America, I think, a bunch of factories. They ran the numbers. They would, on a per-factory basis, save about $2 billion in taxes over 10 years if they just moved their factories to Asia. Not because of wages, because of taxes. So there's just one company that says staying in this country makes no tax sense. So what we are doing to American businesses is we are saying make your stuff overseas and import it without any tax consequence here. 160 countries today border adjust their taxes. America, along with Kenya, Afghanistan, Iraq, Suriname, North Korea, and a handful of other countries don't border adjust our taxes. So by border adjusting our taxes, we're simply going with the mainstream of the rest of the world because what they do, the other 160 countries in the world, they take the tax off of their exports because it's typically going to go to a border adjusted country and it's taxed as it goes in. They tax imports on the way into their country. And here's the point. This isn't designed to make exports or imports better than one another. It's designed to treat them the same. So what I mean when I say that, hey, you started me, you got to give me a second. So this bottle of water, let's just say it's French and this is made in America. These will be taxed at the same rate in America or in France. Right now, they're not. This is kind of interesting here. That's the point we're trying to make here is let's equalize the tax treatment of American-made goods and services so they're not put at a competitive disadvantage. I think that's a pretty good debate to have. So I think that's a pretty good policy to have.
So last one on this, is there any way, can you envision a scenario where tax reform passes the House and it does not include some form of a border adjustment?
Oh, of course. Look, that's the kind of conversation we're having, which is, I already told you, the 80% of the stuff we agree on, that's what we're already putting in the bank of we agree. It's that final 20%, which is, what does the tax base have to look like to get the other 80%? What kind of base broadening do you have to do to get those rates down on businesses? If you don't do what we call a cash flow tax, which is basically a consumption tax, then you have to go with base broadeners from within the domestic tax base. Then you have to look at stuff inside the US domestic business economy to take those things away to lower those rates. That's the trade-off, and that's the kind of conversation we're having right now.
And so if you had to give up the border adjustment tax, what's an example?
Well,
of
I'm
one
not
of
going to
those
get into
trade-offs?
that because those are the kinds of conversations we're having. I don't want to negotiate through the media.